Your president, Donald Trump, is the white supremacist in chief. There's no other way to put it. And to that end, we have to realize where we are in America. The problem is this. People want to say, okay, yes, we have always had white supremacists as presidents, pretty much consistently throughout American history. And so sometimes people use that to say that we don't have to really say anything about Donald Trump because we've always had white supremacists as presidents. Here's the thing. We're really getting to the question of, is there a difference between blatant racism and dog whistle racism? And I would say yes, there is a difference. The difference is that with dog whistle racism, they at least keep the rabidly racist white supremacists and white nationalists at bay, and they don't openly celebrate them, and they don't openly defend them. And it's easy for you to say Nazis are bad. And we have a president today who can't even fix his mouth to say that Nazis are bad. He even went as far as to excuse or try to, it was a whataboutism. We've talked about that before. It's a logical fallacy, not that logic means anything to this man, but it's a logical fallacy that says that it seeks to deflect from the issue at hand by pointing out someone else's hypocrisy or perceived hypocrisy. And Donald Trump did that today by saying, yeah, but what about these so-called alt-left? You know what? We'll talk about the alt-left at another time, in so much that it even exists. But the fact of the matter is, you can tell someone's allegiance by who they are afraid to criticize. And that's why here at the Benjamin Dixon Show, there's no one that I'm afraid to criticize, because I'm not I don't have any alliance or allegiance to anyone, right? My allegiance is to the audience and to the truth, in so much as I see it. But Donald Trump demonstrated today that he could not criticize Nazis. And he could not do it without trying to point and say, what about the alt-left? What about Antifa? I said this morning in my morning broadcast with patrons, and I let them know, it may very well be that next week Antifa will do something that we will have to disavow, because Antifa is crazy like that. Right? I think it's fair to say they would admit that themselves, right? People who are affiliated with Antifa, right now everybody, on the progressive side is pretty grateful and appreciative of you. When you guys, what you guys are going to do, you're going to do something that even progressives are not going to be able to be comfortable with, right? But despite the very worst that Antifa could possibly do, they will never be in comparison or to have an equivalence with Nazis and white supremacists. And then they say, oh, man, they're not technical Nazis because it's not 1930 Germany. Yeah, they are self-avowed Nazis. This is how they identify themselves, okay? So you can go through the pedantic rituals or machinations to say Nazis because they're not German. You can go through that if you want to. But if a man tells me that he's a Nazi and he throws up Nazi salutes and his solutions are similar to that of Nazis, then he's a goddamn Nazi. All right? So the president of the United States could not disavow self-avowed Nazis. And I'm sorry, there is a qualitative difference between a president who rallies white nationalists, white supremacists, neo-Nazis. There's a difference between a president who champions them and rallies them and becomes the center of their rallying cry, and a dog whistle redneck racist Republican or Bill Clinton. I'm sorry. You know why? Because this emboldens, and this is what I said. I said this in the primaries, in the general election. I said the difference may not be that of policy. The difference will be in the streets, because Donald Trump absolutely mobilizes and excites his base of Nazis. And so now they are excited and mobilized, and they are, I mean, how can you not recognize how much stronger
their determination is, how much stronger their their rallying cry is, how much stronger their entire disposition is because of Donald Trump. And so now we're not just fighting systemic racism and white supremacy and anti-Semitism and Islamophobia. We're fighting not only systemic, but we're fighting blatant in your face people we actually literally may have to lay hands on and fight in order to defend ourselves. And right now, I know there's at least two people who are actually dumb enough to be writing an article trying to say that Hillary Clinton is just as bad as Donald Trump, even after today. But the reality of it is it's one thing to fight something systemically. It's another thing to have to physically put your body on the line to oppose people who want to destroy you. Like, I would rather fight in the courts than fight in the streets. And if Hillary Clinton was president, there's probably a litany of things that we would have to fight her in terms of being in the courts, particularly on international affairs, which wouldn't really fall underneath the American judicial system. But I digress. The point is that Hillary Clinton was not a solution to our systemic problems. But damn it, we're not even dealing with systemic problems anymore. We're dealing with systemic problems and having to fight these people in the streets. Because we have a president of the United States who emboldens them so much that they feel like they can march down the streets of Charlottesville. No. Stop. Rewind. This is how bold Donald Trump makes these people. And the guy who killed Heather Heyer. I don't know his name. I don't care to know his name, but I know her name. The guy who killed Heather was dressed in the same garb as Donald Trump. The khaki pants come from Donald Trump. The white polo shirt comes from Donald Trump. And the red Make America Great Again hat, Donald Trump. So he inspires them. He emboldens them. He causes them to organize and go into the streets. And I know Jimmy Dore did a video with Tim Black the other day talking about, oh, I'm surprised, I'm shocked as you, Tim, to see that racism is coming back with Donald Trump. Ha ha ha, key motherfuckers. Listen, this is a different level. And I'm sorry, anybody who's playing this game saying, oh, it's always been here. Yes, it's always been here. But how many times have we had to go into the streets and literally face people face to face who want to kill us in our lifetime? Yeah, we can go back in time to the late 60s, early 70s, when we were literally in the streets and people were literally dying. And guess what? We're back there. We're back at that point where it's not an issue that we have to fight in the courts. It's not an issue that we have to take to the Supreme Court. It's not an issue that we have to protest a president who's expanding American imperialism abroad. We're in the streets having to face off with Nazis and white supremacists who feel like this is their day. And the reason they feel like this is their day is because the president of the United States. So I miss me. Anybody who's still talking this, oh, the Democratic establishment is really the real enemy. And this is just a distraction from Hillary Clinton's emails. And we should be focusing on, you still have people who are talking this, that we should be putting all of our energies in progressives, talking about we should be so-called progressives. We should be putting our energy into investigating Seth Rich. The only people who can say that either are just too dumb to realize that their ass is on the line because they are a person of color, or they are privileged enough to not actually have to worry about someone trying to kill them or someone trying to rip away their rights simply because they are a marginalized group. They're a person of color. They're LGBTQ. They're Muslim. The president of the United States of America could not bring himself to criticize Nazis without saying, yeah, but what about the alt left? And that's how you know where his alliances lie, where his allegiances lie, because he can't bring himself to criticize them. It's a game that I like to play all the time. I'm able to tell who you're loyal to by who you never criticize. And if you go down my Rolodex, I'm pretty sure you've seen I've criticized everybody, including myself. But I love to play this game. Who are you not going to criticize? Well, you've got some on the super dumb left, the conspiratorial left, who won't criticize Donald Trump. They go through painstaking contortions to never criticize Donald Trump. And these are people who call themselves progressives. So their allegiance lies with Donald Trump. You have some who would never criticize Julian Assange, even though he's out here peddling Mike Cernovich, who's a rapist, and Julian Assange been accused of rape. And so, but nobody would dare say anything about Julian Assange. That's because their allegiances lie with Julian Assange. That's like the end all to be all. And that's how you can tell who they are committed to. And Donald Trump demonstrated today that he is committed to the white nationalist movement here in the United States of America, because he could not let 24 hours, not even 24 goddamn hours went by before he had to come back and double down on his both sidism. I mean, what's there left to talk about, people? Donald Trump needs to be impeached. He's got to go. You know why? Because he reminds me of Nero. Except instead of playing the fiddle while Rome burns, he's going to be tweeting while Rome burns. And if you're part of that progressive ilk that says, yes, Donald Trump is going to actually destroy the system and leave us in, yeah, if that's you, then yeah. I mean, I don't even have to cuss you out. You know how stupid you are. Donald Trump has to go because white supremacy is not only systematized in America anymore, not only in the system of America, but it's in the system as well as in your face, in the streets, bold and brash. Listen, if somebody in my job is a racist or anti-Semitic or anti-Semite, or they are Islamophobic, you know what? I would rather not have to fight them every single goddamn day. It's simple. It's very simple. I do not need Nazis to be emboldened in America. I need Nazis running, scared for their lives, or at least scared for their careers, scared to say something anti-Semitic, scared to say something racist, scared to go and march. Not because the government's going to shut them down, but because we, the people, are going to shut them down. We don't need the government to do that. We do it our damn selves. And I'm at the point here where it's like, we're going to have to do it now. Looking forward, we're going to have to do it on a regular goddamn basis. We're going to have to face off now. I mean, no, when I say we, I mean everybody. Commentators who hide behind computers, as well as people who've already been in the streets. You know who's probably celebrating tonight over what Donald Trump did in that press conference? And we're going to play a clip. You know who's celebrating? The dude who killed Heather. He's probably in jail just saying like, yeah, all right, make America great again. David, play the first clip from Donald Trump. Let's take a listen to this numbnuts, dumps. Anyway, let's listen in. Here he is in the press conference.
Do you think you call the alt-left is the same as neo-Nazis?
All of those people, excuse me, I've condemned neo-Nazis. I've condemned many different groups, but not all of those people were neo-Nazis, believe me. Not all of those people were white supremacists by any stretch.
So you said there was hatred, there was violence, and most
Stop right there, David. Actually, let's pause it there.
I think there's blame on.
Let's pause it right there, because not all those people were white supremacists. Could you tell me, out of the 500 people, 700 people that were there that were throwing up a Hitler salute, Sieg Heil, can you tell me which ones were not white supremacists? Can you tell me which ones were not Nazis? How do you know for sure, Donald? Nobody, we know one thing's for sure. More people were participating in the Nazi salute than were not. I would say there's probably a 99% participation rate. So why are you going to bother us and waste our time to point out maybe that one shy motherfucker who doesn't want to do the Nazi suit in full because he's smart enough to realize that there are cameras everywhere? Why are you going to bother us about that? You know why? Because it's a deflection. That's all it is. It's a deflection to try to make us think that there's some equivalence that does not exist. David, go ahead and finish playing that so we can finish listening to this idiot.
Yes,
Here
I
it
think
is.
there's blame on both sides. You look at both sides. I think there's blame on both sides. I have no doubt about it, and you don't have any doubt about it either. So you know what? It's fine. You're changing history. You're changing culture. And you had people, and I'm not talking about the neo-Nazis and the white nationalists, because they should be condemned totally. But you had many people in that group other than neo-Nazis and white nationalists, okay? And the press has treated them absolutely unfairly. Now, in the other group also, you had some fine people, but you also had troublemakers, and you see them come with the
Fine people.
black outfits, helmets, and with the baseball bats. You had a lot of bad people in the other group too.
Yeah, let's stop right there. All right. This is the number one fallacy that's being made by, and it's not a fallacy. When I say fallacy, I'm identifying it as a fallacy, but it's not a logical thing for them. It's intentional. I don't have my camera up, David. I don't know if it's just me. But it's very intentional. It's very intentional in the sense that it's very intentional in the sense that it's insidious. It's intentional. They want to play this logical game, right? Where they create an equivalence between two things that are not equal. They do that because that's the only way they can get away with this. And what Donald Trump is doing here is the same thing the white supremacists have always done. They equate your oppressor with people who are trying to liberate you. They say, yes, your oppressor is evil, but that goddamn Martin Luther King, he's evil too. Yes, the Klan is evil, but the Black Panther Party for self-defense is trying to protect you from the Klan. They're just as bad. And so what they're doing, they're not drawing an equivalence between apples and apples. They're not saying oppressor A is just as equal as oppressor B. What they're saying is oppressor A is the same as the person who's trying to bring you liberation. Now, how are those two things equal? They're trying to equate someone who's gathering in the name of violence in order to hurt you with people who are gathering willing to use violence to protect you. Here it is, very simply. He's equating a murderer with someone who's willing to defend you for self-defense. How are those two things equal? He's equating Nazis who want you destroyed because of your identity with Antifa, who on Saturday, regardless of what Antifa does next week that I'll disagree with, because I'm pretty sure it's coming. That's why I keep saying that. I know Antifa well. I've already had beef with Antifa, personally. I haven't had a confrontation with them, but I dislike a lot of things that they do. But on Saturday, they were there to defend and protect the counter protesters. They were there in the name of self-defense. And yet Donald Trump does the same insidious game of drawing an equivalence between the oppressor and the liberator, the murderer and the self-defense, or whatever. This is what they do. And this is what he did. And so now all of a sudden they're on the same playing field. The people who are there to hurt you are now seen to be equal to protect you. We had police in America that were there to protect and serve. I could use this analogy that he's comparing the person who wants to kill you with the officer who wants to save you. But that's not how America really works. So that's a bad example. I might as well throw that out the window. Somebody said in the chat room, how many of you think you're going to stumble into a Nazi rally? Well, there's one coming up in Boston. See, this is what they're going to do. This is what they're going to do. They're going to be like, oh, well, we don't really want the Nazis there. We want everyone except the Nazis. But the Nazis were just there in Charlottesville, right? And they were there in abundance. They were all lifting up that Sieg Heil. All of them. So are you saying, oh, well, it's not very likely, statistically speaking, you're not likely to roll up on a Nazi event. So why are we even discussing it? Well, because you know what, where the Nazi event actually takes place and someone actually gets hurt, I am just as upset about that as if it happened in my neighborhood. How about that? Question is, are you your brother's keeper, or you don't care because it didn't happen on your block? the young lady who pulled down, or at least wrapped the rope around the Confederate monument in Durham, North Carolina, she's been arrested for property or some jazz. Right? She was arrested today. The video is a great video. Love to see it. Do I care about property? In so much that I want to pass my kids an inheritance. So yeah, I disagree with Marx there all day. To that extent, do I care about racist monuments to a treasonous Confederate South? No, I don't. What? Oh, Ben, it's private property. So what? It's private property erected during Jim Crow to remind black people that you really ain't come that far, nigga. That's what it is. Staring us in the face, that was erected during the height of Jim Crow. It wasn't even, most of these monuments weren't built during the Confederacy, during the Civil War. These were built during a time where black people had a twinkle in their eye that maybe we'll get some full liberation one day. But this was when the system was fighting back to say, hell no, you're not going to get any liberation one day. And just so that you know how much liberation you will never get, let's erect over 100 monuments in the state of Georgia to the Confederacy, which represents your oppressor, the people who literally were willing to fight and die in order to keep you in bondage. This is the Civil War wasn't over slavery. Man, you're dumb as you are goofy. Go put a shirt on. And did I say goofy? I'm sorry. You are as dumb as you are a grifter. If you are using this as an opportunity to peddle your revisionist history that the Civil War had nothing to do with slavery. This is a white progressive peddling this and swearing that somehow he's not a part of the problem, the racist problem. This is the narrative that's being spun on the dumb left. You got to know your enemies as well as your friends, man. The people who call themselves, you got to realize when some of these people who called you a friend are really your enemy. And there's a whole faction of progressives out there who are right now furious. They're furious. And they actually think that Charlottesville was a distraction to take everybody's attention away from the Russia narrative that seemed to be breaking apart based on an article in The Nation. And because of that, they think Charlottesville is a distraction. Heather Hayer's death is nothing more than a distraction. Peddling, saying, "Oh, that this was a false flag perpetrated by police." You have people who call themselves progressives with thousands upon thousands of followers. I'm talking about into the hundreds of thousands of followers combined, maybe even to 500,000 to 1 million followers combined, who are peddling this narrative because they do not want to criticize Trump, number one, and they don't want the attention to come off their pet project. It's like, no, don't talk about that over there. Come over here and talk about what we're comfortable talking about. Meanwhile, the president of the United States is dividing the country. This is not see, when they said it about Obama, it was the most absurd hyperbole that I've ever heard. Obama is trying to divide America. Obama could barely say black. He never said Black Lives Matter unless it's some way to criticize them. He always made apologies. He always was trying to reconcile things. He was always trying to be the great conciliator, the great conciliator, whatever. I'm in a loss tonight. I don't care. He's always trying to be the grand bargainer. Always. At the expense of black people. But here again is this false equivalence that Republicans are masters of. They're willing to say that Barack Obama, by merely existing, never really said, the most he said about Trayvon Martin was this much. If I had a son, he would look like Trayvon. 10 words. If I had a son, he would look like Trayvon. 10 words. That's all he said about Trayvon Martin. And you would have sworn Barack Obama put on his black leather Kango, and cocked his gun like on the movie Panther. Pig. You would think Barack Obama was lit. Barack Obama, they made a fist bump with Barack Obama, some type of black terrorist fist bump. And that's what they allowed, not just in terms of ha kiki. That's what they allowed or used to gridlock any progress. And so you know what Barack Obama did? Nothing. Nothing specifically for the black community, even though everything that he didn't do for the black community, conservatives said, oh, he's just there to help the black community. And then he became the most divisive president in American history simply for existing. Meanwhile, Donald Trump is literally there making excuses for Nazis and white supremacists who just killed a white girl, not even a black girl. I mean, this is a white girl. And let me correct myself, a white woman, not even not a black woman, but a white woman. And they're like, oh, the Nazis that were there were some good people in that crowd. But that Antifa, they came out with bats and they're definitely bad. So now it's all a wash. But Barack Obama was the most divisive president in American history. Yet Donald Trump is right here, right now, siding with the 36% that are still supporting him, who are the Nazis, the white supremacists. That's his approval rating is around 36%. Last I checked. And that has to be just the residuals of the Confederacy. That's where we are. And here he is. Was it Milo that was burning? Nero playing the fiddle, tweeting as Rome burns. You got liberals talking about, oh, don't destroy property. See a Confederate monument? Stomp a Confederate monument. Why? Why is there even a question about this anymore? How many people have to die before we take them all down? You don't understand. This is a latent, bigoted, hate-filled, lingering vestige of the Confederacy that does not want to die. And it wants to rise again. And it wants to rise supreme. White supremacy. It wants everyone to be subjected. If you're going to live in America, see, they're fine. They're like, okay, black supremacy to white supremacy is cool. Right? You got to understand, this is why some black supremacists can get along with white supremacists. They're totally cool so long as we segregate. So long as Africans go back, black people go back to Africa. Go be some black supremacists over in Africa to these whites. That's all they want. But if you're going to stay in America, this is a white man's land. This is how they think. This is what their greatest fear. Their greatest fear is white genocide. I mean, they even listen. Look, okay, we should play. No, I'm not even gonna say that out loud. I just need to do the goddamn video. It's a great idea. I'm not even gonna say it out loud. Watch for the video coming up soon. I want to tell you what it's gonna be, but I'm just gonna do it. I'm just gonna do it because we need to go. I can't finish my sentence without telling you what it is. Whatever. I'm gonna do it tonight, and then I'll do it. If somebody else do this before me, I'm coming. I gotta do the top 10 greatest false equivalencies by conservatives, because we're really going down the line now, right? They draw an equivalence between your oppressor and the liberator. That's why they'll say the Klan is the same as the black as the KKK as the Black Panther Party for self-defense, right? They'll say, oh, Barack Obama was the most divisive president in the United States, and here's a guy who did nothing for the black community, but they'll say nothing about Donald Trump. Right? They draw these false equivalencies that the Nazis who killed a woman. I'm sorry, I even referred to my sisters who are all older than me. I refer to them as girls. Not really. I mean, I guess maybe it is rooted in misogyny. Probably is, but I just grew up calling my sisters girls. But the woman that they killed on Saturday by Nazis, they're trying to draw an equivalence, or they did draw an equivalence between the Nazis who killed a woman on Saturday with Antifa, who was there defending rabbis and priests and preachers, the clergy. This is the game that they play all the time, a game of false equivalence. And we always end up arguing the merits of the false equivalence that they presented instead of just rejecting the premise altogether. And that's we are time and time again. We're here over and over again, arguing with people who intentionally create this illusion. I mean, they do it now, right? They're going to say the alt-right is the same as Black Lives Matter. How? Who is the black? Who has? Who? Actually, or I mean, claimed to be a part of Black Lives Matter and killed somebody? The guy in Houston? No, he expressly said, I am not a part of Black Lives Matter. Yet this guy who ran down Heather, expressly a member, there for it. He was there for it. And we're always going to be chasing our tails. This is the problem with liberals. Liberals always argue the merits of the fallacy. They think it's I guess they think they can reason with these people. You can't reason with these people. You cannot. So here's the thing. What do we do about it? Donald Trump's got to go, man. I'm sorry. Donald Trump has got to go. You know why? Because what Donald Trump did today was to give life to the KKK. Literally. And people think I'm being hyperbolic. You do realize that the Klan endorsed Donald Trump. Right? Go Google it. Klan endorsed Donald Trump. David Duke was a Grand Wizard, Master Flash Dragon, Funky Fresh of the KKK. And thank Donald Trump today. So where you think I'm speaking hyperbolically, no, I'm speaking matter of factly. The Klan is being rejuvenated by Donald Trump. The Nazis, neo-Nazis, are being rejuvenated by Donald Trump. White supremacists, white nationalists are being rejuvenated. The alt-right being energized by the white supremacist in chief, Donald Trump. And I'm sorry. We got no time. We've got no time for this guy. He needs to go. He is the most divisive president in the history of the United States of America. He is the president who could preside over the demise of America, because we would tear ourselves at the seams. Because how many of us are going to yield to Nazis and white supremacists? I mean, not even the Republican Party is really buying into this. And this is why the conversation about impeachment is actually pretty viable right now today. I wouldn't say so last week, but today you see Republicans left and right condemning this man. You know why? Because in the midst, you can have decorum to a fault. And what I mean by that, you could be so concerned with presentation and decorum that you never really look underneath the surface and see how shitty these people are. The facade of decorum is problematic. And this is what my friend Brandon Sutton, he always says. He calls it reckless civility. Civility, where all you're doing is being civil, and you're being civil to be civil, but you're not doing anything to actually solve the problems that are lying underneath. He calls that reckless civility. And I think that's a perfect example of what liberals have done. And that's something that we can be okay with dispensing with. But once you dispense with reckless civility, then you get to the extreme of that of that dispensing, and you get to where people think we are right now. People think we are in a place where all you're doing is seeing what America is really like, with the civility and the decorum thrown away. In other words, people think that all we are doing right now is seeing America through the lens of Donald Trump's oafishness and his lack of decorum. And they're saying, oh, America's really the same. There's nothing different. This is just like it was underneath Obama. It's just we've taken away the decorum. I'm sorry. I do believe that now today we can dispense with that theory and say that that is utter rubbish. Only have we dispensed with the decorum. I mean, forget civility. We're beyond. I mean, we're getting ready to get a hashtag trending on Twitter that says, go fuck yourself, Trump. So civility and reckless civility, that's all going out the window. Decorum is going out the window, not just with us, primarily with the president of the United States, but we're beyond that. This is qualitatively different because we're dealing with a president that's mobilizing the KKK. And that's uniquely different. That's uniquely different than just having a president that is bombastic and rude. And people are really trying to convince themselves that the only difference between Obama and Trump is that Trump is just rude and he's doing the exact same thing as Obama would do. Y'all gonna say that after today? After today, when he could not bring himself to say that people that killed thing, he tried to mix it in there. Yeah, he was like, yeah, it was such a bad thing. It was such a bad thing. Yes, it was a bad thing, but Play the next clip for me. I don't even know what it is, but something tells me it'll be relevant. Just play the next clip for me.
Not all of those
Take a
people
listen.
were white supremacists by any stretch. Those people were also there because they wanted to protest the taking down of a statue, Robert E. Lee. So, excuse me, and you take a look at some of the groups and you see, and you know it if you were honest reporters.
All right, did we lose it? Video. All right, but in that video, he's essentially trying to do exactly what I said. Not trying to do, he did exactly what I said. He's making excuses. Listen, if you cannot repudiate someone and say what they did was wrong, there's no excusing it in the conversation, that shows where your allegiances lie. And President Trump's allegiances lie with Klansmen. And again, I'm speaking hyperbolically, my friend. I'm not speaking hyperbolically. David Duke, the grand wizard of the KKK, is celebrating what Donald Trump said today. All right, let's finish it. We got the rest of the video right here. Let's go.
Because they should be condemned totally. But you had many people in that group protest the taking down of a statue, Robert E. Lee. So, excuse me, and you take a look at some of the groups and you see, and you know it if you were honest reporters, which in many cases you're not, but many of those people were there to protest the taking down of the statue of Robert E. Lee. So this week it's Robert E. Lee. I noticed that Stonewall Jackson's coming down. I wonder, is it George Washington next week? And is it Thomas Jefferson the week after? You know, you really do have to ask yourself, where does it stop? But they were there.
Okay, right there, right there. Oh my, do you guys realize that is 100% a white nationalist talking point? That is 100% what they say to excuse not doing anything. This is their logical game that they play. Is because we're not going to do everything, we shouldn't do anything. Because we're not going to end all of racism, we shouldn't address any of the racism. Do you see this game? Because we're not going to go all the way and take down George Washington, because you're not going to get enough liberals to sign up to that. Let's just be real. But so he's saying, if we're not going to go and get all the way and take down George Washington, why are we taking down Robert E. Lee? These are literally white nationalist talking points, verbatim. The president of the United States. Oh, Ben, well, all the presidents of the United States have always been white nationalists. Why are you acting surprised now? Well, because I don't want to have to go in the streets and actually fight a motherfucker right now. I'm trying to raise kids. I don't want to have to pick up arms and pick up bats and go and do what Antifa likes to do. They get off on that. That's their thing. Not my thing. My thing is I want to go pick up my kids and go to the goddamn park. But if we're going to be faced with an America that has Charlottesville every weekend, I mean, the motto for the protest, quote unquote protest, for the rally that's coming up in Boston this weekend, the motto it was Charlottesville last week, Charlottesville today, Boston next week. That's the rallying cry. I live in Boston. And you guys, and people are like, oh, it's not really that big of a deal, Ben. Here's the thing. I can draw I hope this pisses people off really, really good. I'm going to use the dumb left to demonstrate why we can't sit back and allow this Klansman stuff to fester. Because the more you allow an idea to go unchallenged, the more people look around and say, oh, this must be okay.